So I'll just start off with introducing myself. I'm currently a CISO to multiple clients. I'm also a strategic advisor to early and late stage cybersecurity vendors. I've also been a CISO of multiple Fortune 500 companies, Bank of Montreal, Wells Fargo Capital Markets, and Interpublic Group. And I'm going to move it to Seth to give himself an introduction, and then we'll go to Ilan and Ganesh.
Hi, everyone. Seth Youssef, I'm a security field CTO. As Mariah mentioned, I'm based out of Paris, France. I'm part of a global team in Snowflake. And for the one who doesn't know Snowflake, we are a data cloud and we are a SaaS. We provide different data cloud services to our customers. We get engaged with highly regulated industries and public sector because Snowflake is a mission critical for those types of customers. And we handle the data governance in general, data privacy, and data the security discussions with the different stakeholders within our customers' organizations.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining on early Tuesday morning on the Pacific Coast. Ilan Elango, VP of Engineering at Zeta Global. Right, we deal with massive volumes of data, and in a few minutes we'll go through how we use that data to personalize marketing campaigns for our clients and customers.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ganesh Kirti, founder, CEO of TrustLogix. I've been doing security a long time, so almost 20 years. That's the only thing I have done. Worked at multiple large companies, small companies. This is my second company as a founder. We'll dive into, as Mariah is talking about, getting businesses and security guys work together to get the data out to the right consumer. So I'm really excited for this discussion. Back to you, Mariah.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, we are highly encouraging everyone to submit questions while we have our discussion. So there is a Q&A chat box that you can put a question in. During the session, if one of us can answer the question through the chat, we will, but there will definitely be about 20 minutes at the end where we will address top of mind issues. So we're going to kick off with just a CISO perspective. As I mentioned, I've been a CISO of multiple problems, and I always like to start high level. What is the problem that we're trying to solve here? And really the challenge from a CISO perspective is, on the legacy environments, we had typically, databases, pretty centralized, pretty concentrated, single set of access and users. That's completely turned on its head. Most environments have multiple cloud platforms. They have multiple data stores. Roles increasingly get created and opened to access various services. It gets harder to see who's accessing what. The role explosion, as well, as I talked about, makes it easier to forget accounts that have been potentially, even if somebody's offboarded and leaves the company, may still have access to a number of data stores that you just didn't even realize that they had. So this is definitely a growing problem. And I think one of the best examples, I didn't get to overprivileged accounts, of course, because that is probably one of the most obvious issues around managing data access. The easy button is just to give users default role-based access and not really think about the fine-grained and the tuning that needs to be done to only give those people the specific access they need to the specific data that they need. And that's harder, easier said than done. I will say excess privilege is one of the top issues of our day in terms of this modern environment. And the best example, the Ed Snowden breach, was just one of the most severe and largest data breaches of sensitive data of our time. And Ed Snowden, who was a contractor working at the NSA, an environment where you think they'd have every bell and whistle in terms of monitoring and prevention of data leakage. This really had a severe impact in terms of exposure of what the United States surveil in terms of specific people, specific technology, certainly gave a lot of the spying tools and program exposure to enemies who then were able to circumvent a lot of the surveillance tools that became exposed during that time. And so the question is, how did Ed Snowden, how exactly did he have it? Well, he was an admin. He did have sysadmin access. He had some unlimited authority, clearly more authority than he needed. However, using his access, he was able to gain access to credentials of other users. And he was able to leapfrog across the NSA network to sites that he didn't necessarily, again, need to have access, but he did because he could. And using those stolen credentials, he was able to, number one, not trigger any alarms. He looked like a legitimate user. And he would also be able to access the SSH keys and digital certificates of his colleagues, and was able to then fabricate those keys to then access a lot of these highly sensitive documents. So that's just an example of what the problem is. Yep. Okay, great. So, so now we're going to talk about let's talk about reality. Okay, so we just talked about from a CISO perspective, but this problem has to be shared between data owners and security owners, because security doesn't own this problem, specifically. It has to be solved because, as an example, when you look at, again, the number of data platform, when you look at most environments may have Snowflake on top of their major data systems, there is a lot of granular access that needs to be considered here. And the friction between security owners that may take weeks to actually provision access to data consumers, which is the business who's trying to innovate. They're trying to move fast. They need access immediately. And when security is taking their time, it may definitely impact revenue and what the business needs to do. So, and especially when we're talking about data silos. So if it's marketing or research or finance, many times these silos have to manage their own access. And their knowledge and ability to understand how to provision fine-tuned access is not simple. So when you get down to it, again, the security people can have the right intentions, but in reality, what we're seeing is a lot of independent groups have to understand how to provision access and making sure that the concept of least privilege is typically not executed very well. So I'm going to move this now to the next slide with Zeta Global. And I think Ilan is not going to take the concepts that I just talked about and show us a real-time, in the trenches example of how a heavily data-based organization deals with this problem.
Ilan, you're on mute.
That's what I figured.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Hope you can hear me. So it's an exciting time to be working at Zeta Global, right? This is a brief journey of where we started, right? Early on, before machine learning was, and AI was super sexy. Zeta was founded on the principle of massive volumes of data and machine learning on top of that. Started off by our founders in 2007. In 2018, we launched Zeta Cloud, which is one of the massive volumes of data that we collect. And 2020 was our customer data platform. And fast forward now, last week, we just wrapped up our annual conference, Zeta Live. Massive audience, massive support from all the people, where we published some of our Gen AI capabilities. Let's see. Seem to perfect. Thank you. So this is a quick scale of what we do here at Zeta. 241 million people is what Zeta holds. And the main thing that we do at Zeta is, on behalf of our clients, we allow them to, we have all this various signals, various attributes about users. When we talk about identity here, we are actually talking about people, right? People, personal profiles, user profiles. This many number of people, we know a lot about these people, right? We collect all of this based from postal address to email address, phone numbers, what device they connect with, and so forth. It allows our clients to hyper personalize marketing messages to them. We provide the platform, various platforms, and we allow our clients to actually target through omni-channels. And just to give you a concept of the scale, 241 million people. Amazon has about 250, Facebook's same, this thing, Google, 210 million. So we have same scale. It's just that this is not a walled garden, right? So the data here at Zeta is available for any of our clients, right? And here are some of our customers trusted by, across various verticals and various industries, lots of enterprise customers, sensitive data. They're very, very, very particular about how their data is protected, how the personal attributes of their customers are governed, and so forth. Moving on. So here's basically a very high-level overview of our marketing platform. We collect data from our clients. Snowflake, we are a trusted partner with Snowflake. We harvest all of this data and validate, standardize, do a lot of our proprietary patent-pending, patented AI engine to come up with insights and give a 360 view of the customers. And once that is available, this is given to our clients, where we can now create marketing campaigns and activate them on multiple channels. That's in a nutshell what Zeta does. And just to talk about the volume of data that we are, the variety of data that we do, we're talking about petabytes worth of data, right? This is across massive ecosystems, Snowflake, AWS S3, right? MySQL, Hadoop, massive clusters, Kafka. We are both on-prem as well as in AWS for low latency operations. We are across various regions in US and EU. So, and all of this complexities, right? We have about 1,000+ users using our cloud-based system. And we have about 10,000 roles. And this is just massive amount of explosion of all the security permissions and roles that we have to manage. Doing this manually is insurmountable, right? It's massive amount of this thing, and we want to make sure with all the compliance related questions that come, how do you answer these proactively? Right? This is one of the biggest challenges that we have at Zeta. Let me see. So we interviewed a bunch of companies in this space, and eventually, we partnered with TrustLogix to come up with a solution of how we want to do this. The most important thing that we wanted was a single pane of governance controls, where we can look at all the users, roles, permissions, and how to govern all of these, and also ensure that any kind of violations and risks that are happening, right, they're surfaced to us before anything big happens. And Ganesh will talk a little bit more about TrustLogix later in this thing. And this is what it gives us: a unified policy management console, right? Listing down of all the data sources. When I say data sources, when we talk about Snowflake, for example, we have like 25 instances of Snowflake within Zeta, right? And it's impossible for us to go into each one of these instances and then find out what the policies are, what are the risks are. With TrustLogix, you can go to the central console, list all the things, and then across all the instances of Snowflake, right, get a single view of what are all the violations, what are all the policies that we've implemented, how do you manage all the risks. And this is not only Snowflake, obviously, right? So TrustLogix works with other databases, MySQL, S3, and so forth, as we are integrating with multiple things. It gives us all of this access in a single place. It shows what are some of the dark data that has not been used in a while, any kind of data sharing risks. And any audit and entitlement reports is so easy from a single pane. And then you can obviously drill down into each one of these instances. Did I lose my slide? Yeah. Quickly get back to. Yeah, so we can, so the key thing, let me just, sorry guys. Okay, there we are. It is impossible without TrustLogix. It's impossible for us to monitor all of this. The roles that we are talking about, we talked about role-based access controls. We have internal roles where we say, hey, this user can access only this slice of data. Now, our clients can have admin accounts, can have viewer accounts. We want to ensure each of those users can see only their slice of data. And dealing with personal customers' data, right, email address, their shopping experiences, and all of that, our clients would want to be want us to ensure that their customers' data is safe with us, right? And more regulations coming in, right? We want to say if a particular person is this particular age, you can't show them these kind of ads, right? How do you implement that, right? It's extremely hard to do this across the variety of databases that we have. And this is where TrustLogix comes and helps us with their ABAC policy, right? It's attribute-based access controls. And so a lot of good things about this. And we've, I just want to, wrap up this thing. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And over to you, Seth.
Thank you very much, Ilan. So as we discussed, Ilan is using Snowflake, and they have multiple instances of Snowflake running different workloads, probably data domains inside their environments. Snowflake, it's a data cloud where basically you run different workloads, and so you can run. It could be you can run your data apps on it. You can use it as a data warehouse or what have you. Now, the focus here on this webinar is the governance, privacy, and security of the data within the platform. And as Mariah mentioned, the risk is even higher and higher, specifically with the data-driven companies, where they want to just go and put their data inside the cloud platforms. They need to make sure the data is protected, not by a single control, but in multiple layers across the environments. And that's when you put your data in a Snowflake, for example. I'm going to walk you through the defense in depth that we use in Snowflake as a way to make sure that your data is protected. So let's start here. You have your tables, you have your views, what have you inside of Snowflake, and then probably you can have some entitlement tables as well to manage your row level access policies or what have you. Now, the next layer here is where you can build your role-based access control, and you can build your data policies like dynamic data masking policy, tokenization, column level control, format preserve encryption for certain requirements. Like Ilan mentioned, they have data sets, and it's PII, it's personal information, it's very sensitive, and it's in EU and US, right? So they need to have a lot of control on the top of those data to make sure only the right people can see the right information or the information they are entitled to see. The next level is the identity and access management. In Snowflake, there is no concept of root account or super admin or what have you. You need to have a proper user authenticated and to be able to be assigned to a role, and then later on the policies will apply. The Next one is the network policies. And this is where you lock down your environment. You can make sure only the authorized IP addresses. And recently we introduced something cool where basically you can make sure only that VPC in AWS can access. So you can use the cloud provider tagging and identifiers like VPC IDs, like link IDs in Azure to make sure like only this domain will be accessing this particular Snowflake account. And that's what the whole encapsulation is called Snowflake. And across the whole environment, the data is always encrypted at rest, is always encrypted in transit. We have built in high availability and disaster recovery, and you can go cross cloud with high availability and disaster recovery as well. And you will get the same Snowflake account, same look and feel. And on the top of that, you have full auditing and monitoring. So all the actions, all user actions against this data during that whole journey within Snowflake can be visible. And this is basically what TrustLogic is using. They use our auditing and monitoring views and information schema to actually build the full end-to-end visibility for the data across not only one single Snowflake account, but multiple of them. Now, we run in a cloud provider, and then you have the ingestion pipeline, right? So the ingestion will have to go through all those layers. You have to go always, you need to use a Snowflake driver, and you have to go all the way here. So whatever data is, whatever policies or configuration you've done, it will apply. And the same when you go and consume the data here, right? So you have the same protection when you go in to ingest the data or when you want to consume this data. And of course, you can integrate Snowflake with, the identity providers like Azure or Okta or what have you, or whatever identity provider that supports single sign-on, OAuth, or SAML. And of course, in terms of consumptions, you can go and use those data apps that can be built on Snowflake, or maybe the consumer is basically the end customer that use another Snowflake driver that needs to connect to the environment. Now, in Snowflake, we identify every single data object. We need to make sure it's well protected, and this is where we use the data product here heavily. So, and data products originally came from the data mesh in vocabulary, but this is now is expanded. What is a data product? Data product first will be start with data sources. Like those data sources can be inside the Snowflake or maybe can be outside of Snowflake, right? Sadly, not all the customers, they have their data in Snowflake. We help everybody to move there to Snowflake later on. But again, those are outside and inside of Snowflake. And this is where you need a platform that actually can be able to see the full data flow, specifically like Ilan's example, the sensitive data flow that goes from source all the way to consumption. You need to have visibility across the board. Now, you can ingest the data in Snowflake. Once it comes in Snowflake, actually, you can use different data products from other Snowflake accounts, right? You can use data sharing. And with data sharing, there is no data movement. And keep that in mind. The less copy you have of your data, the more secure you are, right? And now once you ingested this data, now you need to apply tagging and classification. So classification, basically, like, for example, in the use case, you need to make sure that the personal identifiable information is well tagged. And you need to understand what are those objects. For example, you want to build a table based on a different views and different tables. You need to make sure what are the components of those, where the sensitive data is, and if you change or update a specific sensitive column, what's the impact level down the line. And that's very important for GDPR and CCPA, where basically you need to have privacy impact assessment to see how the data flow from end to end. And then you need to apply policies. And of course, you can apply policies without tags, right? But, you shouldn't, right? If you can tag your data, you apply the policy to the tags, and that will follow across all the environment. And this is where Snowflake we don't live alone, right? We integrate here with like ETL partners and with the partners like TrustLogic, where they run in the top of Snowflake out of band, and they consume the metadata only. They don't consume the data from Snowflake. So the data stays in Snowflake, and they go and identify the policies across not only one Snowflake account, but across multiple Snowflake accounts. And that will make sure you have uniform policy enforcement And then now what is called the data product. The data product will be prepared to be in for consumption. The consumption could be via direct data sharing or via Snowflake Marketplace. And keep in mind, if, for instance, you are using the single pane of a glass of TrustLogic from here to apply a policy, the policy will automatically apply and the protection is going to be real time. There is no need to go and start touching multiple points to go and start deploying those policies across the board. Of course, but the main important aspect of the data product is basically auditing and monitoring the feedback loop as well to see who is actually consuming this data product. Like, for example, with Mariah in the introductory slide, when she mentioned, like, okay, somebody just took massive amount of data without no one knows, right? So here you go. You need to keep this auditing and monitoring in real time and to see how the data flow across multiple data points across the data pipeline. Now, the last one here, and I will hand it over back to Ganesh, is like how we do governance in Snowflake. Like, don't get me on this. Governance has a wide definition in general, right? But what we define it in Snowflake is you need to know your data, which basically by classification and tagging, then you go and you protect this data. And here's where TrustLogic works with Snowflake. They use those native controls to make sure like it's lightweight, it's not intrusive, they don't create additional unnecessary objects in Snowflake. They use the native control, and then you go and apply the masking policy at the tags, row access policy to make sure like specific person will see, like let's say if you are in France, you will see only the French data. You're not authorized to see anything outside of your region. And then once you go there, you can consume the data using different workload. It doesn't matter. All this has to go via the identification and the protection here. And finally, all the interaction with your data, including the policy enforcement, will be recorded in an object called access history, where you can see the read and writes, in addition to the object dependencies. And all those are integrated with TrustLogic, right? So all those, except here, like, conditional masking, tag-based masking as well, all of those are integrated, and TrustLogic uses those native control. I'm pretty much done here. Back to you, Ganesh. Hopefully I didn't overshoot the time.
Oh, you're great. Thank you. All right. Brian and Ilan, thank you so much. I think you guys said made it easy for me to continue the discussion. Do you guys see my slide? I'm just sharing my slide now.
Yes.
All right. Folks, the mission we have at TrustLogic is, we want to simplify implementing access controls for data in the cloud. It's a very, very hard to implement access controls in general. Now, I come from a background where, spent 10, 11 years building these security products at large companies like Oracle, building cloud security in the past. And it's a very, very hard, and it's become very complex in the cloud. Mariah talked about how security and business people need to collaborate, but that's the siloed way that's happening today. And Ilan talked about, hundreds and hundreds of data sources. So that's really what we are up to, help customers to simplify that implementation. And then here is what we do. We've combined both data access controls and security together to implement security for data in the cloud. That's really what we believe, that that's the only way to secure data in the cloud, not just only the access control, not just the visibility, right? But you have to combine them together. So that's what we do. We provide two things: data security posture management, that includes the security, observability, risk management. And the second is managing the data access controls. And then we do that across multiple data platforms. And the way we do this is, as Sid talked about, we don't touch the data. We don't move the data from the data sources. We have a native integration into these data platforms, and that's where we work. That's where our partnership comes from. Snowflake, we're already a partner, been more than 2 years. We are a partner of AWS and a few other data vendors. We don't use agents and proxies in the cloud. We don't believe that agents and proxies will really work, for especially the workloads in the cloud. And then we take metadata. We don't create additional overhead for our customers by implementing overhead of metadata. But if customers already have metadata, we take that and integrate. Metadata includes things like PII, classification, any other tags that are important from the security perspective. We automatically integrate and then provide solution on top of that. That's what we do. Uh, Now, going a little bit deeper, the experience-wise, Mariah talked about how the security and data people had to really work together, and that's really where the trust logics is coming in. So the given is this is what's given today. Multiple data platforms sitting in the cloud, some cases cloud plus on-prem, and then that data continuing to grow. Right, the data ingestion keeps happening, and including the sensitive data, and that is not going down, right? With the AI, ML, and all the other workloads coming in, data products that talked about that. The data is continuing to grow, and then the number of data consumers trying to get access to the data is also growing. And these data consumers have different entitlements from the business perspective, and they need access to the data continuous basis. And that's where the Trust Logics comes into the picture. And Trust Logics is a purpose-built cloud-native data security platform. It's very easy to set it up. Typically, it takes less than an hour, but once you set it up, uh, there are two use cases that we solve. One is a data owner, who is really day-to-day basis responsible for securing access to data. Now they can, using Trust Logics, this is what Ilan talked about, from one central place, they can push down access controls, they can provision access controls across all these data platforms. And it can become very complex. It's not just the roles and permissions. It can become very dynamic based on the business rules. It can go into attributes, it can go into entitlements. Uh, and that's very difficult to implement if you're not a security expert or if you're not a data expert. So you need to have both. On top of that, there is no industry standard. Every data vendor has their own implementation. So now the beauty of Trust Logics is, you as a data owner don't need to understand any of those complexities. So you simply go into Trust Logics, create that policy, it pushes down. So that's one. And then the second thing is from the CISO perspective, Mariah talked about how important it is for security people to really have visibility. Now that's exactly what they're able to achieve using Trust Logics. So both privacy and security folks now using Trust Logics can get instant visibility into what is going on with the data, how is it controlled, how is it secured, and who is accessing it, are they even using it, even though they are given access to data. On top of that, they want to be able to remediate that if they see any risks, if they see any misuse of the data, if they see any violation of privacy. So they need to understand that, not only understand, but also take action on that. So that's really how Trust Logics helps them through recommendations to remediate those things immediately. And using the solution, now they can collaborate. No longer they need to deal with siloed way of doing things. Both data owners and security folks can collaborate and then help the data consumers get access to data much, much faster. So the beauty of the solution is the data consumers don't even know there is a solution like Trust Logics running here. They continue to do what they are doing, except that with Trust Logics, now they've got instantly, faster access and then secure and compliant already taken for them. So folks, this is really, architecturally, we believe that, you need to have both data access and security working together to help data consumers get access to data. Anything less than this is really not a comprehensive security. That's really what we believe. That's really, how the security has to work. And then this scales massively. Now, how do we do this, right? So just to kind of get an idea, Mariah talked about the chaos situation, right? On the ground, Ilan talked about a lot, thousands of roles, and they've got, troubleshooting tickets coming in every week. This is really a chaos situation, the way we see, in our discussions with our customers. Now, you've got to have a methodical way, a systematic approach to solve this, to streamline the process for enterprises. So that's really where we define this four-step process, wherein it goes step by step methodically. Step one is really want to understand the data access patterns. How is data used and who is using it and where is the data shared, who is it shared with. And once you understand that, you start understanding and providing a visibility to the data owners, data architects, through the visibility through the dashboards and the risks, and then giving them recommendations wherein, if there is a privacy compliance that is not applied already, imagine there is a PII data sitting in there, but there is no masking policy on that. So we start giving them recommendations. Look, you got some privacy data here, but it's not secure. So there is clearly a GDPR Article 25 violation. So that recommendation is given to them immediately, and then they can take an action. That's a step number 2. The step number 3 is with those recommendations, now you got to go enforce, you got to go take action. So we automatically start without any needing of writing a code, no code-based policies. We help you provision access controls. That includes both RBAC and ABAC. Now, it's not one-time thing. Access control is not just you do it and then leave it on, right? It's you have to continuously keep an eye on that. So you got to keep on looking for, a data scientist is given access to the data, but is he using it? If he's not using it last 2 months, maybe he doesn't need access to that because he's moved on from the projects. So this is a continuation of where you constantly keep looking for overly granted access, ineffective access control policies. You start providing, recommendations through which you are cleaning up access and cleaning up the ineffective policies so that you bring it down to the least access controls implemented at any given point of time. So that's what this last step is all about, recertifying the users, whether the access is as entitled, based on the business requirements. So this is really the 4 steps working together. This is what our implementation is. Our platform is implemented. Now, when this is deployed, this is how typically a deployment looks like for a given customer. Customers, Ilan talked about in a very massive, complex environment. That's really what we see with every company that we talk to. Now, that's where TrustLogix comes in complementarily, sits in alongside with their data and their identity systems, their metadata, data governance platform. So integrating through those platforms, looking at all the data, and then providing those 4 steps I talked about. Methodically, providing recommendations, giving visibility, and then helping them implement those access controls. So I'll stop here. I've kind of talked about where TrustLogix comes in, trying to bring the collaboration between security and business folks, how it reduces the complexity using these 4 steps frameworks. And whether you use TrustLogix or not, right? We believe that you need to have a process like this 4 steps framework we talked about. That's really what everyone should be using as a guideline, to implement whether your own solution or whether you buy a solution like TrustLogix. I'll stop here and then let's take questions. Imran, I'll bring it back to you.
Thank you, Dinesh. Super, super helpful. Really, really fascinating just seeing the case studies and then how you address it. We folks, please put your questions into Q&A. Now is the time. We have had Lav send some questions in, and we've been answering them. If you're interested in terms of implementation questions. Lav, do you have any other questions that you'd like us to answer live? Okay. Well, while people think of some questions, I do see a couple of priority ones, and specifically, I think this question is going to go to Ilan. So, Ilan, so can you tell us a bit in terms of how many, in addition to Snowflake, how many other data platforms are typically used, and what type of challenges do you have?
Great. Thanks, Moraya. We have far too many that we can that I can think of. We've got from NoSQL databases. Our predominant data structures are all unstructured data that we make it very easy for our clients to get the data into our ecosystem. A bunch of SQL databases from Postgres to MySQLs. Of course, object storage like S3, a lot of data sits there, Parquet, Avro formats. So we deal with massive amounts of data and then a variety, heterogeneous mix of data as well. So which makes it even more challenging for us to say, hey, data is not always in a relational format. And even within Snowflake, we use the variant type, right, to store unstructured data as much as possible. So
that's super helpful. Thank you. We have Damjan Stefanovsky. He has a question. And the question is, are there any predefined out-of-the-box privacy controls that can be tuned in accordance to the regulation or the personal information that's actually processed?
I can take that, right. And then Seth, please feel free to add in as well. From the Trustlogic perspective, we do have set of the policies that we ship out of the box, and these are monitoring policies, including some regulation, GDPR, Sarbanes-Oxley and SOC 2, specific set of policies. This includes things like from the privacy perspective, and if you have a PII data, is the data, protected using the right masking, right anonymization controls in place, and does it have the least privileges, right? Whenever, data DBA is trying to access the data, for example, there's a separation of duties perspective. You want to restrict the access to the data set. So we do have out of the box monitoring policies that we ship, and then you can just enable them. And then we keep on adding those policies as an ongoing basis. And happy to do a demo offline, if it's required. Sid, if you want to add anything, please go ahead as well.
From data platform and the when you build the data product, so basically that's what we will produce, like within I believe the next month we will produce an article like step by step how you store, process, and ingest and consume sensitive data, including PII in Snowflake. With something like is helpful. For instance, if you want to go to the Article 25 or Article 10 or what have you, you click on that link, it takes you directly where it goes to the document to see the set of tools that you need to implement. And this is where the integration here that happens between Snowflake and TrustLogic. We provide all those tools that you can implement by yourself, right? Or you can use TrustLogic as a single pane of glass with out-of-box tooling, and that will help you to scale the deployment of those policies and control across your data pipeline.
So Seth, from what I understand, you're saying you can customize privacy policies according to whatever country you're in specifically. Is there any like GDPR out of the box right now, Ganesh?
So we do have some as specific to as it relates to the data. There are certain GDPR policies we do have. We do ship out of the box. Yes, as I gave an example of Article 25, for example, right? The privacy by default. So we do look for some of those controls out of the box.
Okay, great. And we have another question from Piyush. They'd like to know in more detail about challenges around ABAC enforcement on distributed data stored in multiple storage platforms.
Yeah. So I think Piyush, it's good to see that question. The ABAC itself, right? It's a complicated thing, and then we simplified it from the TrustLogic perspective. We realized that you need to have ABAC. It's given the complexity of how the data is used in the world today we live in. RBAC is not enough, so you need to have ABAC. So we do have ABAC support. With the question specific to on the distributed data stored, that's really where we have some concepts like delegated access controls. In the federated world, right? We have concepts like the global access control policies. Wherein you can define a policy in one place and then that distributes the policy across multiple data platforms. So that you don't need to go to each one of the data platforms and then create this access policy. So if you have, especially, it becomes even more interesting if you have some type of classification on those distributed data sets. From TrustLogic's perspective, what we can do is you can simply define a policy that says that, look, any PI data in my data sets across multiple data sets should not be given access to data scientists. Let's say you define a policy at the top. What we do is we take that policy and then we can push down across all these multiple data sets so that any PI data that is classified will not be given access to the data scientists, right? So we do have concepts like that. That's very important, and we do see that interestingly becoming more relevant and common with the complex data sets that companies are implementing with data products and delegated controls.
Thank you, Ganesh.
Yes.
We do have another question from Steve for you, Ganesh. How do you see the TrustLogic's product being managed by the AppSec team or the app dev team or both?
Hmm.
Could it be managed by the app dev team, and have you seen it being done successfully?
Yeah, so Steve, thank you. It's a great question, and that's really one of the things we thought a lot about from early on. Mariah talked about in the slide, right? The app dev and AppSec, I'll just use in the data world, right? The data owners or data architects kind of like falls into that app dev concept that you have, and then the AppSec is more like the data security, right? So we see those two personas in general, stakeholders in some fashion, right? Data owners own the data security guys, they're not data owners, but they are accountable from the security and risk perspective. So the data, the platform that we have built tries to bring them together to collaborate on getting the data out to the right people in a secure fashion. So today, we do see both users using our system, data owners and data architects on a daily basis, implementing access controls to secure right access with the right access controls. And then we do see the security people from the CISO organization specifically, uh, if not daily basis, on a continuous basis, coming into TrustLogix and then look for risks and then look for any misuse of the data, looks for any violations. So they do use that. So we do bring them together. Absolutely, the answer is yes. We do see both, the data app devs from the data consumption perspective and then the data security perspective using the solution. And we do see it's very successfully used, and we do have customers using this. Within the same customer environment, we have data owners creating access controls, and then we have CISO organization keeping an eye on, especially to get the evidence that the right policies are implemented that they have recommended to the business people. So we do see that successfully, used by both teams.
Okay, great. And another good question from Rajesh. Rajesh would like to know from you, Ganesh, how is TrustLogix different than Oracle CloudGuard or other provider solution?
Yeah, so I know a little bit of Oracle, having worked at Oracle, more than 12 years, including that part of our last company, the CASB. Most of the what I know for the last Oracle CloudGuard is primarily focusing on the OCI, Oracle database, and then Oracle infrastructure. What we do is a little bit different. We are focusing on that data. We go much deeper into the data, and we do go into the databases, tables, columns, permissions, RBAC and ABAC, and various things that goes much deeper into the data. And then we do across multiple data platforms. Sid talked about Snowflake and Redshift and S3, right? So we are a multi-data platform focusing on that data. As far as the CloudGuard is concerned, CloudGuard to me is more like the CSPM, cloud security posture management, infrastructure level security. So our customers typically use today both the cloud infrastructure, cloud security like Oracle CloudGuard, and then they also use us from the data security perspective. So we kind of complement from the customer perspective to provide securing the data access.
So from what I hear, Ganesh, that you go much deeper in terms of the tuning and the fine grained controls.
For the data at the data layer, yes.
So it's not a replacement; it's a complement.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, great. Another question is, what level of expertise does the team need to implement a solution like TrustLogix? And I know security people are not typically data experts. So what should you consider when selecting a platform that will help them manage data access security? And again, we're coming back to the intersection between data owners and security owners. They can both be buyers. So typically, who's the buyer or who's the mix of buyers and what kind of experts are needed to implement?
Yeah, so it's as you talked about, Mariah early on, right? It's a very complex. Elon talked about the complexity of the situation, right? And Sid talked about from the Snowflake perspective how they are helping with the key capabilities from the platform wise. The complexity is given, the data sprawl is given today. Whether you like it or not, right? Multi-data platforms, data products, Uh, so given that situation, we early on spent a lot of time wherein we don't expect that our customers are experts in security or access controls. And then, with that in mind, our solution works in a way where out of the box, we ship policies, monitoring policies. That's where we provide the policy recommendations to make it easy. And then that's the reason we also build no code based policies for our customers. So typically without Trust Logics, it takes days and sometimes weeks to create a simple access controls, to get entitlement reports. And then they had to coordinate with multiple DBAs and data people, and then they had to write the SQL code. It's a very complex. So what we have done is with TrustLogic, we significantly simplified that. So they just go to TrustLogic's UI and then they create a policy. They don't need to understand any complexities. It's very easy to use. I'm happy to do demo, later on to folks interested. They go into the UI and then they create a policy. They push it within few minutes. They're able to push down the policies and get the data consumers access to data. And then within, Elon talked a lot about that, and they have seen that with using us, they have now, they used to, before TrustLogix, they used to take, hours and days sometimes, to remediate troubleshooting tickets. Troubleshooting tickets are things like, data consumers, like data engineers, complaining, I can't access this data. Oh, you told me you gave me access to this role, but I can't access this table. It's a continuous, process where they are complaining, and it's very difficult to troubleshoot when you have thousands of roles and hundreds of data sets. So we have something called Access Analyzer that helps, from the data operations perspective, that gives them immediately, visibility, and then helps them, troubleshoot and then remediate those issues within minutes. So we've got some concepts like data access analyzer, privilege role templates, out of the box monitoring policies that customers can immediately use and then get things moving without needing to have an expertise. So happy to do a demo as well if anyone is interested.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ganesh. So it certainly sounds like it's plug and play, no proxy or agents needed. And as a CISO, I can get answers on who's accessing what when my auditors and regulators come in the door, and as well as the problem, from my perspective around excess privilege. That issue just is continuing to grow and is becoming a bigger risk every day with modern architectures. So fascinating conversations. I wanted to thank all our speakers today. Seth, you provided an amazing perspective around integration, provisioning, and how you secure your customer data. Elon, thank you for giving us in the trenches perspectives on the challenge of extremely data-centric organization, and how you approach the problem with thankfully some solutions like TrustLogix that exist today. And Ganesh, I want to thank you as the founder about thinking about this problem, really coming up with a way to address it, and being open to new stakeholders with their questions and impacting a long-term roadmap as this problem is going to continue to grow. And lastly, I want to thank the audience. Thank you, everyone, for giving us an hour of your time today. Please do, reach out and follow up with any one of us. You can probably just respond to webinar link as well, or Ganesh directly. Ganesh, do folks have your email? How do they get a hold of you if they have any other questions?
Yeah, it is Ganesh at trustlogic.io.
Okay, so if anyone wants any follow-up demos or other questions, Ganesh at trustlogics.io. Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you to all the panelists and attendees, and have a great rest of your day.